Hi folks, welcome to the show. I'm Luke Hector and I'm the Broken Meeple. This is a show devoted to board games where I give reviews, top 10s, and always give my honest opinion regardless of the consequences that might befall me. We'll get on with the top 10 in just a second, but first I want to say a quick word from the sponsor of this channel. Different sponsor for this video, chaps. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Shirts and Merch Studio on Etsy. This is a small UK based company selling shirts, basically gaming related t-shirts. As you can see, I am donning the Caverner shirt, as I call it. I know it says the Agricola shirt on the website, but Caverner beats Agricola, blow me. But they also do other ones as well, such as this Keep Calm, I Read the Rules t-shirt that I've also been donning for recent conventions. And, as I say, they are gaming t-shirts. This is a large t-shirt which fits fairly snugly on someone as somewhat big and rotund as myself. Maybe I might get a couple of extra larges just to get me through the summer heat wave, but they fit pretty fine. They're roomy, they're comfortable, and of course they have various different designs to coincide with certain games like Ark Nova and, as I say, Agricola and a few others. Even Everdell and Root, I think, feature on there. And of course there's other ones with typical meeple designs to cater for both genders.
Clothing, delicious clothing.
So check them out and see if they've got a design that you want to buy your gamer spouse for their birthday. Thank you Shirts and Merch for sponsoring this video, and now on with the top 10.
Get on with it.
Right, quick costume change because it does get pretty warm in here with the lights and that, and I want to wear that gaming shirt later on for some gaming, so I kind of wanted to put it aside for a moment. But this top 10 is top 10 immersive games. I've made a lot of talk and big deals on podcasts and that about theme in games. Good mechanics will make a game good, but a good theme will bring me back for the second play. This is kind of Luke's law, basically, when it comes to my feelings on a lot of games. And certainly theme makes a game a lot better for me. It makes it easier to teach, it makes it more enjoyable to play, and this can go for Ameritrash, Euro, story-based campaigns, whatever. It can go for any type of game. But I thought, okay, can we expand on this a bit? Because I didn't want to just do top 10 thematic games. Firstly, I've already done top 10 thematic Euros with Paul Grogan. You can have a look at that live stream if you want. That was quite a lengthy one, but it was a good fun one. And certainly one of the more popular ones, actually, funny enough. But I didn't want to simply do top 10 thematic games because, well, the sky's your limit when it comes to talking about 10 thematic games. So I wanted to go into a little bit more detail, get it a little more niche, and I thought, well, what about immersion? Because I talk about immersion, I used to talk about it when I did detail reviews before, and immersion was one of the segments on there. And it's not just a case of, oh, the game has a good theme, but it's how immersed in the world am I in? You know, how like sucked into the game am I with its setting and what you're doing and all that. And I thought, that's different because you can have a thematic Euro where the mechanics make sense to what's going on, but it's not necessarily immersive. I mean, Ark Nova, for example, yeah, the mechanics make sense for, like the different animals kind of make sense for their abilities and building the zoo and getting appeal for people coming to see animals and getting conservation points for helping the environment. The theme is there. But immersion, I mean, I'm making up a lot of the stuff for the immersion in that game. Yes, I'm joking about other people's zoos, but you are still building a tableau of cards and getting icons and stuff like that. So I would call it reasonably thematic, but I wouldn't necessarily call it, immersive. There is a little bit of a difference between the two. And so I figured I'd try a top 10 and see how things go. And it was harder than I thought. In fact, I dare say I could do a top 20 of this. And this is a mix of Euros and, story Ameritrashy games. So Euros can be immersive as well, although most of the Euros probably ended up in the 20 through 11 segment. So the top 10 is probably going to be a little bit more away from that. But it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on some of these, and I'm sure that some of the honourable mentions you're going to be like, why weren't they in your top 10? But I have my reasons, because it's not just the game being immersive, it's also the fact that I enjoy playing the game. That's got to have some factor. You could have the most immersive game about a train driver who goes off to, it's like, oh my god, he's got to run a small business, he's got to lay the train tracks, will he pay the dividends to his shareholders? Oh, we'll find out soon. And it would still suck.
What the hell is that?
Okay, it doesn't matter how rich that story you make, it would still suck as a game. So, there is a bit of a difference. But enough waffling, let's get on with it. For my number 10, we have probably my only space game on the list. And people will think, well, surely a lot of these space games can be immersive. Depends, and even then the gameplay's got to match with it. For me, this is my favourite space game, the one where I go, right, this is the space game I want to pull out if somebody wants to play something of this genre. There are many to choose from, but for me, Empires of the Void takes it. And I'm not even going to call it a second edition anymore, because frankly, you can't get the original, so who cares? But this one is my space game of choice. The idea, yes, you're building up your, kind of like your colony ship and you're going off to different planets and meeting the population and waging battles and doing missions. But I like the fact that this world feels like a living world. When you're in this, you can see the planets that are out there, but they've all got different species on there. You can decide whether you want to be friends with them or whether you want to attack them.
I claim this planet in the name of Mars. Isn't that lovely?
Both have different repercussions. One gets you the resources, but then one gets you the allies of the planet to help you in combat. And then on top of that, you've got all the different mission cards that you pull, the power card. So one minute you're doing a delivery from X to Y, the next minute you're battling some other warship, and the next minute you're like doing diplomatic negotiations over another planet. It's not like it's not like there's a mechanic for each of those bits, but you are telling like little mini stories of your saga, and I love the events in it. I don't like it when games have events, which is just start of the round, here's the event. Round 1, event. Round 2, event. I don't like those. These ones are very dynamic events because you take an event for each of the planets and you just shuffle them into the deck, and then they come out at random times. They could come out all at once, they could come spread out, one could happen at the very beginning. And these range from economic boons to sea monsters to self-destruct mechanisms on planets. There's a lot of variety in those cards, and the fact that they're just in there randomly means that the world feels alive, and as such I can get immersed in this space game way more than something like Twilight Imperium, and certainly more than something like Eclipse. Now, I did contemplate something like ISS Vanguard, but ISS Vanguard with its dice puzzle does kind of take me out of the immersion when I'm in a mission. Most of the immersion is when I'm on the ship doing all the tinkering and all the upgrades and stuff like that. So coupled with the long setup and everything, that one just kind of falls off the list and doesn't quite meet my standards for this. But Empires of the Void is still one of my still is my favorite space game to date, and I love it. The world is alive, and therefore I'm going to get immersed in it more. My number 9 was a bit of a heated debate with myself because I had a choice of 2 games here, and this is to fit the Star Wars license. And I thought, well, technically this one is maybe a little bit more immersive, but then I never get it played. It's only 2-player, and a lot of things just kind of thought, I don't know, maybe it doesn't fit to be on this list because I just don't know how often I'll ever play it. This one though I can play solo or with other players, and I get it to the table more, and the recent expansion has uplifted it in my appreciation, which is Star Wars Outer Rim. This one is basically the bounty hunters of Star Wars. So you're going around doing missions and getting in the way of the rebels, the empires, the Hutts and things like that. You're getting bounties from all these different NPC characters. You're upgrading your ship, buying a new ship, doing all these missions and all sorts of things like that. And you're telling the story of your character as they rise to fame throughout the game, and everybody else is doing the same, occasionally getting in your face or sometimes even cooperating with you at times. But this one is a very good immersive world for the Star Wars universe. This one doesn't... When I'm playing the game, I don't feel like I'm just playing a bunch of mechanics. I feel like I'm telling my character's story, and while going through and doing everything, by the end of the game, I have this story to tell from start to finish. From this ship, to that ship, to these guns, to this bounty, to this mission, and it does a good job. But it wouldn't necessarily be higher on the list. I did contemplate Star Wars Rebellion, but again, 2 players, 3 hours, hard to get to the table compared to this one. It's just that I did debate. I mean, Star Wars Rebellion could easily make my 20 through 11, frankly, but I just figured that for gameplay, this one kind of elevates itself above it purely because it is easier to get played, and yet still does a good job of the immersion factor. Star Wars Rebellion has a lot of immersive elements, but you still got to remember 1 or 2 mechanics in there. And also, one of the main problems with the original game, the combat wasn't fixed until an expansion came out for it. So I am and I'm sure if you want to replace it with Star Wars Rebellion at this number 9 spot, then by all means do so. You've got to have a Star Wars game on this list somewhere. And for me, Outer Rim is my choice. This one is interesting because some of you are going to agree with this wholeheartedly. Some of you are going to think I'm on Quaaludes. This is a pure Euro game. Pure Euro game. Very thematic Euro game. Very interactive Euro game. Very recent Euro game. Yes, this monster of a Euro game, this 4-hour plus 4-player tops monstrosity of an economic Euro game is in my top 10 immersive games, because even though this isn't a theme I typically go for, you know, I don't like to talk about real world politics outside of this, but this Eurogame has surprised me in just how invested I am in the game and what's going on every time I bring out Hegemony. What? So much so that at BakeCon this week, I'm probably going to be bringing it out twice. And I brought it out at the last convention, and I even played it solo on Tabletop Simulator the other day. This is, yes, it's a Eurogame, it's economics and tax and things like that, but the social politics part of it, you know, the idea that you've got the working class that are good with, you know, that they can exert pressure on the voting side of things for laws. You've got the state watching over everything. The capitalists just want to make money. They don't care about the workers. They want to pay them little. The middle class is self-sufficient. All these things interact together in such a clever way that when I'm playing this game with other people, we are talking about the politics side of things, both in and out of the game. And everything in the game feels just richly thematic, and I just kind of get into the role, whichever one I'm playing, the capitalist scum, or the working class peasants as we call it, you know, just for laughs obviously, and it just kind of works. I couldn't be much more higher up this list, and I did debate whether this was going to meet maybe my 20 through 11, but maybe it's a Cult of the New factor. I mean, I'm not typically Cult of the New, but it is a new Eurogame that I am enjoying, but I'm enjoying it a lot, and this is for a game with a fairly eclectic theme and a long game length, so it talks wonders that I'm still enjoying it this much.
I never get involved in politics.
I'm invested, I'm immersed in what is going on. Even though it's based on real world settings, it just does it so well that it's a good representation, and it makes me enjoy the game more and makes it slightly easier to teach. I mean, it's a long teach, don't get me wrong. This is not a game that you think, oh yeah, I can teach this easily. But when you reference certain things thematically in the game, people get it, they understand it. It's long, it's huge, it's a brain burner, but even though it has a long game length, I'm still interested in what's going on with everybody, and I'm immersed in the theme of the game rather than just simply the mechanics of the card system or the law system and that. It works really well. You may think it's a bit of a cheat, but for me, I think it just does such a good job with its theme that it deserves a mention. My number 7 has been a top 10 game for me for many, many years. In most cases, my number 1. Yes, this one is a card game, it's a co-op, but every time I play this, partially because, you know, slight bias, I do love superheroes as a theme, I gotta give props to Sentinels in the Multiverse, which always gets me immersed every time I'm playing it, whether it's solo or preferably with other people, and everybody is role-playing their hero. We've got the villain, every single one behaves uniquely, differently, thematically, and while I'm playing it, I feel like I'm just basically telling my own MCU movie. You know, with all the different characters, one on support, one doing the fighting, one blocking, the fact that everybody gets hit lots at the start and then slowly reels back and then starts to punch the other guy in the face. It's, well, you know, alright, it's a bit more glamorous than that, but still.
Dude, you're embarrassing me in front of the wizards.
I cannot wait for Rook City to come out. We are in the UK, which sucks when it comes to releases, which means that we still don't have Rook City out on retail release yet. Everybody else is enjoying it in America and all that on Kickstarter, and I don't have Rook City on my shelf. I want Rook City! Soon, please soon. Hurry up, import duty, border control, whatever. Hey, calm down. I just want it so bad. There's so much good stuff in that expansion I'm looking forward to, but just generally Sentinels in the Multiverse. I mean, one of the most immersive experiences I had with the old version, the enhanced version, was in the first one playing the, what was it called, Oblivion. It was the last expansion they did, and it was basically jumping the shark for the game, but it basically was the whole thing of going up against the equivalent of Thanos or Darkseid, or Galactus I suppose would fit. And it was like a multi-hero battle. It went on for hours. This is me playing it solo, and you'd have different missions to do, and if you did them, like new characters and items would appear out of time and reality. It just made for one of the best experiences I've had playing a superhero game ever, even though it took forever and burnt my brain. But a typical game of Sentinels will still get me immersed, and I know some of it is because I love superheroes, but then to be honest, that's kind of gonna factor into your immersion, really, isn't it? I made that like ridiculous train driver example earlier. I don't care about trains. It doesn't matter what you do with a train driver story, I'm not going to get immersed in it. So naturally I've got to have some liking for the subject matter, although Hegemony, Not always. There are exceptions to the rule. So, you know, I suppose, I mean, it's not on this list, but Obsession, for example, I talked heavily in that review about how that can be something I can get immersed in, even though I don't necessarily like the theme that's attracted to it. So, you know, these little things to bear in mind. But Sentinels, oh, yeah, every time, immersed, always works.
You ever tried shawarma?
Whew, it is getting hot in here, I gotta be slightly careful. But this is now going on to more of a story-based game, because, yeah, there are story-based games, and I think as we get further up, they're gonna be mostly like that. But this one is an LCG, probably in terms of immersion, my favorite LCG. Not necessarily my favorite LCG that I play, it's hard to rank them at this point, but in terms of story and immersion, Arkham Horror LCG does the best job. This one tells a very good, interesting story throughout the whole campaign. It retains that really good horror element of the Cthulhu universe while giving you, uniquely identifiable characters that you build up with experience over time, so you get more invested in the character you're playing and their backstories. I mean, I've actually got, let me show you on this. Hang on, here we go. I haven't even finished reading this yet. I bought this book ages ago, right? It's got backstories, short stories for all the characters. So there's like Marie Lambeau there, and it's like usually about 4 or 5 pages or so, depending. There's Zoe's there, and it's got great artwork, and it basically tells the backstory of how they get involved in the Cthulhu universe. I haven't even read all these yet, because maybe I just don't get time to read. But this is the kind of thing that I like from the Arkham universe. You know, just a short, quick snippet to give me a backstory for a character. And you know, that book is really cool, but then I also, it's things like that that make me like the LCG, the story that it tells through the campaign. It's kind of like a short story, but it's gritty, it's, you know, it's immersive, it's very thematic, and there are times where I'm dreading some of the missions I'm going on. I mean, cool blimey, as an arachnophobe, you can understand that I struggled a little bit with the Dream Eater saga. I have never sweated in a card game so much before, playing a spider-esque scenario.
Hello.
For Arkham Horror. The first mission that you do in the Waking World in the Dream Eaters, I swear would give me nightmares. I swear it probably did give me nightmares.
We have such sights to show you.
It was the scariest experience I've had to do as an arachnophobe with that game. It's got to be immersive if it's going to do that to me, because it's not just, oh, the picture's nasty or whatever. No, the whole concept of what's going on in that scenario is just downright freaky. And so it's got to be doing something well in the immersion department to make me like go, to make me dread that much.
Your kids are soft.
My number 5 is a brand new game that I've been playing, mainly only since, December time I think I got it, and this is huge. It comes in a box about this big on the camera. I mean, I took it to a convention recently and I pretty much carried it on my shoulders like that. That's how big this game is. But I like dark, gritty settings for board games and computer games because I feel that it's easier to get immersed in those worlds because it is more meaningful, and it's, it's not sort of like happy sunshine and rainbows and all that boring stuff. No, I like a good gritty dark setting when it comes to, world building. And so this one, based on a video game and probably the best board game adaptation of a video game in terms of representing the source material, Frostpunk is definitely a really immersive game. I mean, you are surviving in a post-apocalyptic cold winter. Yes, it's worker placement with how you do the various actions, but you are conferring with everybody else around the table or playing it solo. It works for me. I mean, I played a free player of it for ages at the last convention, and it was a blast. They enjoyed it. We had a great time. We won the scenario, the storm scenario. On easy mode, yes, get those easy society startups from Board Game Geek. Trust me, your experience will be more enjoyable if you use them rather than the stupidly hellish difficulty ones in the base box.
Just give us a chance, you son of a.
But the game itself is still great fun, and where the immersion comes from is not just the interaction with other players, it's also the stories that are told throughout with those morning and dusk cards. You flip over a card in the morning, has something that you got to decide, multiple options, and they add different cards to a dusk deck that at the end of the round you draw from, and you might have to face the consequences, good or bad, of your decisions doing other things. So the whole game is basically one big story that you're telling, and all these different events you will remember from the game. Like, you will remember what you did, whether you put children to work or shoved them into a shelter. You'll remember whether you built a fighting ring and then had some guy actually accidentally get killed in the fighting ring. You'll have something about a quack doctor in a cave somewhere, and you thought, you know what, let's train him up, maybe he'll be a good doctor, and it turned out he was. But then there'll be another story about, look, we ain't got time to worry about your safety concerns or whatever.
I just want a railing, you know? One railing, right here.
And then the generator half explodes and you end up with a casualty. And it's, cool stories like that are told from those cards, making this a really rich thematic game, and there is just nothing better. I mean, there are close approximations out there, but in terms of respecting its original source material, Frostpunk is just an A+ example of such. My number 4 is a game I have not pulled out for some considerable time, mainly because I need to relearn the rules to it, and it is a little bloated with the expansion thrown in. It's not even a theme that I typically go for. I know pretty much nothing about movies from this genre. I've watched a few, and frankly, they're more parodies of the setting rather than being proper examples, although maybe with 1 or 2 exceptions. Certainly I've not watched any of the classics, Clint Eastwood and all that lot. But yeah, you can see where I'm going with this. This is Western Legends. Western Legends is a sandbox game where everybody takes up the role of a character in a Western theme. I do not watch Western movies. And when I say I've watched stuff that's mostly like parodies of the setting, I mean, yeah, I've watched stuff like Django Unchained. Is that Western? I'm not entirely sure. But then, what else have I watched? Maverick, Back to the Future 3, Wild Wild West. I mean, most films I watch that involve the Wild West are typically just parodies or comedies. I've not watched a Clint Eastwood movie, for example. I've not watched Tombstone or anything like that.
I beg to differ, sir.
Even though I use the clip every now and again, I know the clip, the scene, I just never watched the actual movie. But when I play this game, you can do whatever you like. You can go fight bandits, you can go rob trains, you can go play poker, high stakes, you can go, go find, rustle cattle, you can go find gold, prospecting, you can go off and do other little side missions. With the expansion, you can do even more stuff, go to a different city and do all sorts and get items and horses and guns and be a lawman or be a bandit, be a bandit, be against the law or with the law. Am I going to catch perpetrators? Am I going to be the one robbing the bank in the first place? So much you can do in this game, so much theme, strong theme. I mean, no game represents the Western theme better than Western Legends does, and when you play it, you are immersed in the Wild West setting, even if you're someone like me who doesn't typically know anything about Westerns.
Clint Eastwood never wore anything like this. You
can't help but talk like a cowboy. You can't help but, get into the fact that all your cards are poker cards and you're playing it like you're in a proper high-stakes poker game, and stuff like that. It works wonders. And granted, I need to seriously relearn the rules to this game if I'm ever going to bring it out again, but if somebody else wants to take it to a convention and knows it all inside out, then by all means I'll jump into that game. Although, curb the game length if you're going to play with more than 4 players, just saying. But it's still great fun, wonderfully immersive. Western Legends does the trick. If you're into this theme a lot better than I am, then you need to try this. Right, for number 3, we are looking back at the Cthulhu mythos, and this will be the last Cthulhu game that makes the list. I kind of wanted to keep just one game for each license for the most part, but in the case of Cthulhu, I couldn't quite do that. This one had to be alongside Arkham Horror LCG, and when I thought of the 2 of them, I thought, nah, this one is clearly the most immersive, because this one is scenario-based, quick scenarios, with the app giving you assistance, with cool stories, the theme, the soundtrack, all the different sound effects off it, and just the puzzles that you do. Of course, Mansions of Madness has to be on a list about immersive games. This one is certainly one I haven't played in some time, but I still have it and I still enjoy it, and I will still happily bring it out every now and again. And whether it's for a short scenario, which sadly there isn't a lot of, seriously Fantasy Flight, what is it about you and not making games short? Or the longer scenarios that take a lot more time, whether it's by yourself or with a group, this one is just a perfect immersive Cthulhian storytelling game. I mean, it's, you know, you don't have to worry about it being some extended long-length campaign that you've got to commit multiple sessions to. You can just play the scenario one evening, one day perhaps, and go through the scenario and you're done and dusted. But the app does a brilliant job of keeping you immersed in the story, what is going on, the characters you interact with, the soundtrack, the ambient noise, the ambient sound effects that come off there, even the combat when you're fighting against different monsters. And it's not just a case of you attack, do 3 damage, it's alright, what type of attack are you doing? And then it gives a little example of what is happening in the combat. You know, do you slide under the knees and then give it a sweep, you know, and take out its feet? You know, it's, do you, like, you know, conjure a spell that sparks off in your hands and then shoots like Star Wars-esque lightning bolt or whatever? You know, it tells a good story and keeps you fully immersed in its setting. Yes, you know, some people are going to be like, oh, but what happens when they don't support the app? The app will still work for some considerable time, okay? It's not like it's going to suddenly die.
And I'm the bad guy?
And trust me, even if it died right now, like completely died right now and I couldn't play the game, I've gotten enough hours out of that game to make it worthwhile, especially with all the expansion content that's in there. But pro tip for Mansions of Madness, forget the miniatures. The miniatures in it are garbage. They're not good looking miniatures, they're fragile and frail, and you have to try and get them on these little plastic cover pieces that hide the tile that's relevant to it with all the actual important information on, and by the time you've got a lot of expansions you can't even identify what these miniatures are. Leave them in the box or burn them, frankly. What you do is that as soon as it says bring out this monster, get the tile, put it on the board. It has artwork, it has useful information, that is all you need. The miniatures are dumb, don't use them. Z Garcia agrees with me on this, and believe me, it's the way I will always play Mansions of Madness now. Forget the miniatures. So pro tips aside that you do have to deal with, this game is still wonderfully immersive. If anything, taking out the miniatures probably helps with the immersion factor. But yeah, I can't think of a more immersive Cthulhu game, although I'd be interested to know your thoughts if there's one you consider better. For my number 2, we are going back to video game sourced adaptations, and this one was the king of the world before Frostpunk came along, but this one is still fantastic. I have so many memories of games I've played of this, whether it's a scenario or the 3-act campaign you get in the latest expansion, I think Days of the Siege or something like that, and this one it's just great. It's brilliant. It's dark, it's gritty, it's based on a real world setting, kind of like the aftermath or the a different perspective from a war-torn city. Yes, this will trigger a lot of people who play this game because it's doesn't hold back in some of its subject matters. I mean, put it this way, the last campaign I did involved me having to do loads of side missions for an orphanage, only for it then to be shelled by the time I got to it in the epilogue because somebody didn't do a good job of finding a safe location. Whoopsie.
You're a monster!
But this war of mine, dark, gritty, you know, really grisly. I mean, you've got characters who get miserable and commit suicide because they just can't handle it anymore. This is a very dark game, okay? And not for the faint-hearted, not for the easily triggered. I do warn you of this now. I mean, play the video game for about 30 minutes and tell me if that is enough to go, okay, maybe this is a bit too dark for me, because trust me, it doesn't let up in this game. You know, the mechanics are fairly straightforward. I mean, for the most part, you are, allocating actions to the different characters so that you can try and scrounge food, make water, make a chair, whatever, excavate part of your house, border it up because thugs are going to come around and try and steal your stuff. But then you go out on scavenging missions and you have a deck of cards, you shuffle it, they've got different little things that happen in them, you may have uneventful times, you might have other raiders you got to contend with, you might find an old woman and an old woman and husband there, and it's like, well, what do I do? I mean, do I negotiate with you for some stuff? Do I nick your stuff? Do I try and steal it? Do I horrifically actually kill you and take your stuff? I mean, this is how dark it can get sometimes, people. It's hard to talk about it.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Especially for what's supposed to be a family-friendly-esque, channel. But yeah, that's what this game is like. But it is immersive. It is great to play. I love playing this solo. There's really no reason to play this multiplayer. And that Days of the Siege campaign, 3 acts, 3 games, multiple endings, multiple paths. If I had more time, I would love to pull out again and play through it like even another time. But it's given me one of the most rich thematic story experiences that I have had, only possibly surmounted slightly by my number 1. And even then, maybe you could argue this one has been slightly more immersive in places, but the gameplay wise, I mean, my number 1 and 2 were very difficult to rank here. But yeah, if you like this setting, you want dark and grisly, this War of Mine is just so good for immersion. You will be sucked into this world and you will care about the characters that you meet and control, because you'd be a monster if you didn't. And so my number 1 for rich immersive storytelling has to go to the one extended length campaign game that I can put my stock behind, because I'm getting fed up with campaigns now. Every game's got to have a campaign. And I roll my eyes every time a Euro game says it's a campaign. Legacy of You that's come out recently for the solo games. Oh look, it's a campaign. In Arnak, you know, it was a great Euro game, and then they thought, no, we've got to have a solo campaign. And My City, a legacy game from Reiner Knizia, and it's got a campaign mode in it. Seriously, can we stop it with the friggin' campaigns? Is it so hard to just have a scenario? Have you heard of the word scenario? But I digress. This is still a campaign game. You've got to commit time to it. It's going to take a long time for you to get through it, because you're talking like 12, 15 chapters per setting you do. But man, is this world cool. It's a cool world. It's a grisly, dark world. It has some of the best writing I have seen in any campaign game to date. The stories that it tells, the world building, it is top-notch material in Tainted Grail. Yes, mechanically it's got some issues and you have to house through a few things, particularly in the first edition, but the new one, Kings of Ruin, the prototype I played for a Kickstarter review, you know, did fix a lot of those things and is certainly showing promise. And the fact that they're introducing a lot of those changes to the first one means that if you are going to jump in on the first Tainted Grail game with those upgrades, it will be a much better experience. But you know, tomato, tomato. You can pick the first one or you can pick Kings of Ruin to start off in Tainted Grail if you're brand new. Honestly, doesn't make a huge amount of difference. They're both standalone. But man, you know, the world I am fully immersed in. I love playing this. I mean, something I haven't mentioned with the other games, I like playing them with soundtracks. So the Frostpunk soundtrack, the This War of Mine soundtrack, the Cthulhu app has its own soundtrack. Here, play another soundtrack. Play like a Arthurian Legend soundtrack, you know, one of the more dark, grisly folklore ones, and it is just so immersive. The story is rich. I am interested in what's going on. I want to know about these different settlements and people that you meet. The artwork and again aesthetics make up for a lot of that immersion as well. And in here, Tainted Grail, all that horrific grisly artwork of the monsters that you fight against with the cool combat card system, and just everything kind of being, you know, happiness is not something you find in this game at all. I mean, everything, even your own character has a bit of a dark, dismal backstory. But you want to explore, you want to find out what's going on, you want to progress through the story, but then you also want to just kind of detour and just go, oh, just have a look in here. And it's like, oh, this is interesting.
We were in terrible peril. Look, let me go back in there and face the peril. No, it's too perilous.
It's such good writing. Really, really solid. And so when it comes to campaign games, I mentioned ISS Vanguard briefly before. There's other games like Oathsworn, and then of course the overrated Gloomhaven and stuff like that. I just can't get into those anywhere near as much as Tainted Grail from an immersion perspective. This one is the king of all campaign story-driven games that I know of, and that's including some actual pretty good ones like Sleeping Gods and a couple of others. But Sleeping Gods is really cool, but I don't know. That one is more short story, like immersions type thing. This is a proper epic novel level of immersion. Tainted Grail, can't wait to try out Kings of Ruin when it gets released proper, but I've still got all the Tainted Grail material downstairs. I think I've played through it all now except for Red Death. I don't know when I'll get time for that, but I'm certainly looking forward to Kings of Ruin when it comes out. Yeah, easily number 1. So there you go, my top 10 immersive games that I love. There's certainly some honorable mentions, and most of them would just be in my 20 through 11, and there's certainly going to be ones that you would be like, where is this game, Luke? Explain yourself. You like to do that, don't you? Well, you know, let me go over a few here on my phone and just mention a few. So, okay, first off, Pursuit of Happiness. And you'd be like, what? That Euro game? How exactly is the game of life suddenly immersive? When you teach Pursuit of Happiness, I can teach most of the rules in a thematic sense. When you're doing all the different cards and projects and buying items, everybody is trash talking each other and making fun of what story and life that they are leading. That has to speak volumes about the level of immersion and theme in the game. I am invested in what people are doing, I am role-playing my character. Sometimes I'll make decisions based certainly on the role-play side of things rather than it being the most efficient move to do. And it just creates a lot of hilarious stories, particularly when you throw in some of the expansions, the mini expansions and community and stuff. It has to be immersive for that to work. And I played it at the last convention with somebody's copy. I taught them their big box version. And again, great fun with my slightly weird goth punk girlfriend Mel and my family of kids that was sucking up a lot of my time from being a high CEO of a company. As you know, there was a lot of cool stories you can tell with this game. But top 10? Probably not, but certainly in my 20 through 11, for sure. Alright, Sniper Elite I consider. Sniper Elite, Hidden Movement. I haven't really played the video game at all, despite the fact that I've actually got one on my Steam for like £2 and I still haven't even tried it. But in terms of hidden movement games, this one just feels a lot more thematic and immersive than a lot of the others. Oh, I mean, you could argue that maybe Fury of Dracula is a bit more immersive, but Fury of Dracula takes forever. It's got too many rules, it's clunky, it's just not, it's too long and drawn out. Sniper Elite is a lot quicker, and it feels like, you feel like a sniper. I mean, you're trying to stay stealthy from all the supposed German forces or whatever it is you're fighting, but the fact that you can take pot shots with your sniper rifle and there's different roles in that, it is a very immersive setting, but top 10 again, probably not. Now, people are really going to have my head off for this. Where was Nemesis, Luke? Well, Nemesis, it is immersive. I will concede it's immersive, but gameplay lets it down. I'm actually tempted to sell my whole collection downstairs, which is going to hurt because it cost me a lot on Kickstarter, and I've got the folded space insert for it, but if it had a better solo mode, I'd be more interested, but I found the solo mode kind of lacking in this game. You pretty much just wander around, try not to get caught, and then just hopefully escape. That's pretty much it. But then the multiplayer kind of feels a bit like that as well. You know, you wander around just trying to find the room that's relevant for you. You might get it, you might not. It's possible to be eliminated early in this game. I mean, we had a friend of ours who, it took 30 minutes to explain all the rules. They died in the second round. Okay, the second round. They were eliminated from a game that they'd spent 30 minutes having it all explained. That sucked for them, okay? And trust me, it would suck for me if it happened to me as well. And I've had games where I've been eliminated and it's like, well, what do I do now? The gameplay is quite clunky. It's not the easiest one to do, but it is very immersive. And so it could be a 20 to 11 pick, but it would still be quite low down because the gameplay hurts this one. It certainly is Alien the movie, but I just wish it was a bit shorter, a bit cleaner, and a more robust system. Lockdown was an improvement over the original Nemesis, but even that one still feels quite linear. It feels like you're doing the same stuff every game, and some of the side stuff they throw in, like, getting alien, like samples and like finding out their weaknesses, you just don't get enough time in the game to do it. It doesn't feel like the gameplay element is lacking too much for this to be anywhere near my top 10. That's just the way it is. Alright, okay, what's the next one? Spirit Island. I considered Spirit Island, which is currently in the other room, so I played it the other day. It is immersive, yes, and it certainly is, well, it's more thematic than it is immersive, because when you're playing Spirit Island, yes, all the spirits make sense for their theme, and yes, it certainly is, rich in how the spirits are done, the theme works brilliantly, but when you're playing it, you do feel like you're playing one brain-burny puzzle game, because that's essentially what the game is. It's a brain-burny puzzle. And as soon as I'm having to make a lot of decisions like that from a puzzle aspect, it starts to draw me out of the immersion side of things. It's still very thematic, and I still love the game. It was my #1 last time, or my top 100. Although, will it remain that way? That remains to be seen over time as it passes. But it's just one of those things where, yes, love the puzzle. but the puzzle isn't necessarily the immersive part, it's just the fun, brain-burny part of it. So, thematic, yes. Immersive, not entirely sure. Viticulture, this one felt a little bit biased because I like wine. I like the concepts and all the stuff behind winemaking. I think I've dreamt in the past that in a different life I was a viticulturalist. Like I just went around cruise ships and did stuff with wine and, you know, went to orchards and stuff. It just sounded like a cool job, frankly. But this one, it's a Euro game. There are mechanics thrown in, and yes, you have to kind of abstract how grapes and wine age. But still, I am immersed in that game, and I think this would easily be a 20 to 11 pick for me. But I am kind of biased on the basis that I really like wine and winemaking. If you're not interested in those two things, this game isn't really going to feel that immersive for you. Alright, and what else we got? Last one on my mentions, yes. Street Masters. Street Masters, cool game, you know, beat 'em up, Street Fighter-esque, all the characters feel unique, it plays out a little scenario, you've got a different villain, different stuff happening. It's certainly very immersive when I play it. It would probably be 20 through 11, but I haven't really played the sort of campaign-y stuff that's in that game. It just feels too clunky and I've heard not great things about it. I just play it as one-off scenarios and it feels like you're playing through a very quick episode of Streets of Rage or something, and it is immersive, but probably just not top 10 material. There's probably a ton of campaign-based games I haven't mentioned, a ton of story-based games I've not mentioned, and, you know, I'd be interested to hear about those, but I would particularly be interested to hear your thoughts on any Euro games that you find immersive. You might have been shocked to me mentioning Pursuit of Happiness and Hegemony and stuff like that. It'd be interesting to know if there's any other Euro games that have fit the bill for you in terms of immersion, and why. But of course, by all means, get your comments down below and let me know your thoughts on the list and what games you would consider to be immersive. Hopefully this has been a bit more interesting than simply just doing top 10 thematic games, because it certainly is a very different list to the one I did before with Paul Grogan, although some of that is because of new releases, but even then, there has been some chop and changing between the two lists because thematic and immersive are still two different things at the end of the day. But by all means, let me know your thoughts. Next top 10 that I'll be doing will be top 10 nature-themed games. Yes, we've had the release of Earth. Go check out my review for that. But I feel it's time for me to do my top 10 nature games, which was harder than I thought because there's a lot of nature games I've not played, but there's still enough to do a 10, and also I wanted to do it because very conveniently, it wasn't planned, but very conveniently, Earth Day is on the 23rd of April this year, I believe, Saturday the 23rd of April, so I figured it'd be good to release a nature-themed top 10 on Earth Day, so I'm certainly going to aim for that for a 23rd of April release. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, please remember you can thumb it up on YouTube, consider subscribing to the Patreon to help fund the channel and support it, but also get your comments down below as I've explained. If you want to check out more content on The Broken Meeple, then by all means check out the top 10 series I did for casual, advanced and intermediate 2-player games, and of course the recent full review that I have done for Earth, the new Kickstarter that is certainly making a buzz in the board gaming world. Take care, and remember as always, regardless of what kind of world you'd find yourself immersed in, remember to come back to reality at some point and still remember, it's only a game. Bye for now, everybody.